Journey with Judy. Honest, open, transparent. It's hot.
There's no such thing as perfect people. There's no such thing as a perfect life. So come as you are, broken.
Good morning. You are journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. And I just want to give you a heads up that it is the final Sunday before we start our Lenten journey. So sin, my friends. Be selfish, self-absorbed, and just get all of your sin out of the way, because I don't know if you're anything like me, when it comes to Lent, those 40 days, and I think that's funny because I think us Catholics, we just try to be really good for 40 days. We can be awful the other 300 and some days of the year, but those 40 days of Lent, we're just stepping up our religious game. You know, we're fasting and we're praying and we're giving. And so here's the thing. This is 3 days before you got to be doing all that stuff, Rob. So I just want to encourage you to be prayerful and thoughtful about your Lenten journey. And of course, I'm kidding when I tell you to sin, because, you know, with sin, we never win. That's an absolute fact. So as we approach this Lenten journey, I pray that it's a really profoundly impactful time for you to enter into, you know, the experiences that Jesus did, to know what it really means to be loved, to know what it means to be betrayed, forgiven, just everything that Lent helps us to be mindful of. So here's the deal. I get to, and I say get to, and I mean a capital get to, watch my kids play sports. Like, I just love watching all of my kids play sports. I don't necessarily love sports or love watching your kid play sports. Like, I'm not that kind of parent, but I am a parent who loves watching my kid. Now, I want to qualify and tell you, I don't think I'm a parent that's living vicariously through my kids' sports. But what I do recognize is that they have been given some gift. They're gifted and talented. And again, I'm not a bragger about my kids. I'm the first one to name their stuff. But I do feel that they have some athletic ability, and therefore they should be using that athletic ability to the glory of God, because they have it. So if you use it, you use it. If you have it, you use it. That's just my motto. And so my daughter Campbell is probably the least interested in athletics of all four of my children. She absolutely would much rather sit on the couch and, I don't know, like watch How I Met Your Mother, maybe watch some Instagram videos. Like she just is and I don't want to say a couch potato because that sounds negative, but she says that she'd rather like die than go play volleyball. Now, when I believe that's a lie too, that she'd rather die. But the reality is when I watch my kids play, I see a side of them that I don't normally see. You know, a side of competitiveness, a side, just sports are such a great platform to bring out either the best version of yourself or the worst. Now, Campbell plays club volleyball, and she is on a team that has really just had some unfortunate circumstances affect them. They just injuries. From the first day the girls stepped on the court, one girl got hurt, another girl got hurt, they lost another girl. So they really have had a lot of adversity, and they've had to persevere despite the fact that the team is not what they had hoped it to be, they expected it to be, and it is what it is, right? So they went into this 3-day President's Day tournament last weekend, and they were playing the number 1 seed. Now, Campbell's team was the 11th seed. And so we were driving, and Campbell said, you know, we're absolutely going to get killed, you know. And I said, Cam, you know, you need to be positive. And she goes, I'm positive we are absolutely going to get killed. And so I think her and her teammates all went into this particular match believing for sure that they were absolutely going to get killed. And so that was their reality. Like, there was no gray. It was just a black and white. They're better. We're worse. They're the 1st seed. We're the 11th seed. So obviously they're going to get killed. Well, Mr. Positive, my man Bob, when he was watching these girls warm up, he goes, just so you know, they're going to get killed. So the consensus from all the parents was, we're going to get killed. And we had already decided, we were rolled over and died before the match even started. Here's what was so cool is that this black and white world that we were living in, it was so beautiful as the matches unfolded, how our girls stepped into the gray. And they absolutely killed it. I mean, it was my kid always says when he comes home from college, like, Mom, you look so old since I last saw you. I am convinced that just birthing my children and parenting my children is what makes me old. But watching volleyball has made me old. It is like the highest highs and the lowest lows. I mean, you're winning, you're losing. Like, it just never is over until the other team gets 25 points quicker than you. And so anyway, watching these girls play, I mean, it was so exhilarating. It was just so amazing. And at the end of the day, they beat this number one seed. I mean, there were so many people around this court like, what? I mean, it was so black and white. There was absolutely no room for gray. And what was so crazy is at the end, I was wondering like what the perspective might have been for the other team versus what our perspective was. And so if I had to guess, I would say, our team would say they made mistakes and we played great. And that was the deciding factor. And so this thing about the gray area, like things that we look at as so black and white, I mean, are we really willing to step into the gray? And I'm not talking about 50 Shades of Gray. I'm not talking about even, what's it called, Rob? 50 Shades of Darker Gray. Oh, maybe I am talking about that today. So you should probably stay tuned as we journey with Judy and talk about 50 Shades of Darker Gray. Can you tell I didn't read the books or watch the movie? I always tell people I will not read those books nor watch the movie because I'm pretty sure I will go searching for Christian Grey. And somebody told me that's his name. Oh, yeah. We'll be back after the break. You're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. All right, so welcome back. You're journeying with Judy, and we're talking about some 50 Shades Darker of Gray. And what does that really mean to you? Because I'm using this reference of my daughter's volleyball team where they went into this particular match, and it's volleyball, so it's not rocket science, it's not life or death, but it is a perspective that got me thinking about how we are so willing to just call something black or white. It is what it is. When reality is there are so many times in life when stepping into the gray can absolutely benefit us, or where stepping into the gray can absolutely work to our detriment. So gray, in my mind, sometimes is a color, but it's also a choice. All right, so what is gray? Gray is a color, or is gray a choice? Okay, to me, a choice is an intentional mistake that benefited you but might have hurt another. So to me, a mistake is when we do something we know is wrong, we choose to call it a mistake. When in reality, and we're going to be hearing a lot about this in the upcoming 40 days, when in reality, it's just a sin, right? Now, what does Campbell's win have to do with sin today? It has everything to do with it, because the reality is they stepped into that equation in a black and white scenario. They didn't even really know they always say you don't know what you don't know. And that's just so true. So it's so interesting to me because when I make a mistake, it's minuscule. But when you make a mistake, Robs, well, not you, because I love you, but my family, who I love in a different way, it's monumental, right? When we make a mistake, we totally play it down. But when someone else makes a mistake, it just seems so monumental. Now here, let's be honest, open and transparent. We know when we do it, it's wrong. Right? And so then it's called a sin. So sin causes us, especially if you had some Catholic upbringing like me, which I love my Catholic faith. I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying guilt so many times is a reason for us not to do something, right? So because we're going to feel, I hear so many people go like, I got some good old Catholic guilt. Like guilt is actually a good thing, Robs. Guilt is something that, like godly sorrow, when we feel bad because we did something, a mistake or not, black and white or gray. The fact is when we can recognize it as such, because we have this godly sorrow, call it guilt, call it whatever you want. The reality is we really don't want to call something a sin because there's a moral absolute associated with a sin. Okay, we make a mistake, we sin. That is like really, really wrong. And when we think about sin, we think punishment. I think punishment, like some kind of punishment. Now here by definition, sin is a transgression of divine law, okay? Sin is this willful and deliberate thing. Like I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway. Let me give you some examples. So these are some examples for my kids that are kind of past tense, but I could see every one of them doing the same thing this many years later. There was a time where Chandler left without permission. He justified leaving by minimizing it and making light of it and saying, but I texted you. Okay, but he didn't have permission. He left without permission. His way out was, well, because I had texted you. Kennedy used our credit card on the internet, which totally is against, okay, call it a sin, call it a mistake. You can call it whatever you want. The reality is Kennedy justified it by saying, but I needed it. Like, I needed it. Whatever it is she needed. I think it was a calculator. Like, she needed it for school, but the reality was she didn't ask, and she violated this rule or expectation that we have, right? There was a time where Carter had someone in our home that wasn't supposed to be there because we weren't there. Well, he said, well, the reason I did is because if I asked you, you would have said no. Okay, does that make it Robin shake? It's so funny to me because whenever I'm talking, I can look at Robin and she's nodding her head either because she has no idea how I even have a show for this many years or because she can actually relate to what I'm saying from a parent's perspective, right? Another time, Campbell didn't call from where she was. She was supposed to call me at the certain time. And when I asked her about it, she made light of it, laughed it off, minimized it, and said, well, I didn't call because you'd make me come home. So in every one of those instances, there was a black and white area, but there was also an opportunity for every one of my children to step into the gray. They knew it was wrong, but they did it anyway. And it's so funny to me because as we approach this Lenten journey, it's so normal for us to compare our sin to somebody else's sin. You know, one of the quotes I sent to both of my boys this week, I send them a quote every single day that's appropriate for them and I hope applies to their life. And it had a ruler and it had a guy like kind of slacking at one side of the ruler and a guy running at the other side of the ruler. And it said, do not measure your success but with somebody else's ruler. So when we look at someone else and go, oh, well, at least I'm not doing what they're doing. Okay, well, we live in a culture where the ceiling has become the floor. And I'm hoping that you are not doing what other people are doing. So the reality is, here's the other thing about Campbell's team, which really relates to this whole thing about sinning versus making a mistake. What I love about her team is when they do something less than the best play, they're very quick to own it. I watch all of them tap their chest right away and go, my bad, my bad. And there's something very beautiful about the reality of us owning those things that we do, whether it was a choice or whether it was a sin, mistake, choice or not. When we can say my bad, it's really a deal changer. And I absolutely love that. Okay, so you're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. And that is because of Kunis Country Auto Group that this show even exists for 5 years running. Okay, we'll be back after the break.
When they say there's a heaven for those who will wait, and some say it's better, but I say it ain't. I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints.
All right, so Billy Joel, I don't know. Do you agree with him or do you not? Like, do only the good die young? Would you rather be a sinner? Would you rather be a saint? I think I'd rather be a sinner. Excuse me. I think I'd rather be a saint. But I think the only difference in the two is that a sinner just keeps getting back up again and ultimately has the opportunity to always become a saint. And I definitely want to be that. Like, I really want to be someone who recognizes a mistake versus when I'm literally just all about the sin, right? When I am making a mistake, it's just an error in opinion, judgment. I'm just being careless. I got some poor reasoning and insufficient knowledge. Like, maybe I didn't know it. Maybe I didn't see it. My bad. You know, like Campbell's teammates. My bad. That's very different, you know. So, okay, so I made a mistake. Nobody's perfect. The reality is when we say things like, you know, I didn't know, I wasn't sure, you didn't tell me, he did it, everybody does it, give me a break, it's no big deal, you expect me to be perfect, you're unreasonable, you're controlling. These are all things that my kids say. I think the reality is we do have to choose our battles when it comes to this kind of stuff. And the examples that I gave of my 4 children and those, you know, cited those examples, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they were sinful things. I think they were just errors in judgment and opinion. I think they carelessly reasoned away the justification for doing those 4 things that they know we're okay. But when we're talking about sin, like this reality of sin, it's in every one of our lives. And the sooner we recognize it, the more willing we are to recognize that we need a savior, right? So here's the deal. If we all just make mistakes, then we can call ourselves, I'm just a mistaker, right? So I'll try harder and I'll get better. The reality is when we're sinners, we need a savior. And when we're sinners that need a savior, we choose to be accountable at a deeper level because here's why. We know better, and so we genuinely desire to do better. So we know the truth. We know that when we lower that bar and we move from black to white to gray or even darker shades of gray, it was intentional. Like, it's funny because when my kids used to go to confession, they would say, they always confess the same thing. And the joke with other denominations is, well, I don't need to confess to like some priest. I can just talk to God. Well, there's something very beautiful about saying out loud what it is that you've done. I mean, you know how we say sorry, Robs? Well, don't you want to know what they're sorry for? When someone says sorry to you, you can't just say you're sorry without being specific of what you're sorry about. My sister brought that to mind the other day when I called her and said, I'm sorry for everything. She wanted specifics to the everything, but there were so many everythings. I just couldn't narrow it down. So anyway, the difference in a mistake and a sin, a mistake doesn't consider the internal written law that's placed within our heart. What I think's so crazy is if you watch little kids play and they do something wrong, there's something about their behavior that you can look at them and know. Like, I mean, whether it's a kid who's pooping in his pants and he's not supposed to, he goes in the corner or they go to that place where their body language and what they're giving off is an absolute indicator that they know they have done something wrong. And somewhere along the line between when we're so small and it is black and white, we do step into the gray. We do lower the bar and we allow ourselves to justify things because we live in a culture that allows us the twist. Like it's just a mistake. It's just the twist that we get to put on it that says, well, I don't have to be responsible. I don't have to be accountable. And here's the deal. Jesus came to say that, yes, we do. We get to be accountable. We get to be responsible. And we get to have a Savior who we can press into, who knew everything. He experienced everything that we experienced. And he was able to keep the bar raised. And here's what he's saying to us. Like, what you thought you are, you're not. You're not a mistake maker. I love that song. I'm trying to think of that song. I'm a chain breaker. I'm a way maker. And that song where this person singing about that Jesus is that chain breaker. He is a way maker. And so he doesn't even dumb it down, Rob's. Like he doesn't dumb it down. He elevates the expectation. I recently had a very intense conversation with my son. And it was interesting because we hadn't talked for a while, and when we were both ready to talk, I sent him an invite, like through my email, like sent an invite. It's so funny. I do that now because I love the technology. So I'll send my kids a message and they'll decline it. It's like you don't get to decline it. You do not get to decline it. So anyway, when we came to the dialogue, my son said to me, you know what, Mom, the difference is I feel judged by you. You're judging me. And it was such a beautiful opportunity for me to explain to my son that I was judging his actions. He feels judged because he knows he lowered his own bar for himself and therefore has felt judged by me. When the reality is, just like Jesus, and I'm definitely not equating myself to Jesus in this instance, but what I'm saying is, if we're loving, we talked about this last week with my dad. If we're loving, we are desiring the absolute highest and best good for those people that we love. And yeah, we're going to judge their actions when their actions do not align with their intentions. And that the impact that they end up having, it's not a mistake, Robs. It's not a mistake where they had an error in judgment, a careless decision due to poor reasoning. It is an absolute, intentional, deliberate choice to lower the bar and be the lesser version of themselves. And I'm not tolerating it. Robs, you're not tolerating it. So I just pray this week that you are mindful of those godly people in your life, that you are not measuring your sin or your mistakes with somebody else's ruler, because you know who it is that what God calls you to be. You know that you are not a mistake maker, but you are a sinner who needs a savior. And press into him these 40 days of Lent. Let him know you, let him love you, and let him change you. And if you're not going to do any of those things, my friends, then I guess just keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. Peace out.